Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Coffee Hour Thursday. We're on the downward slide. So thanks everybody for joining me today on this episode of Coffee Hour. It's great to have you here. We know you can do anything in your morning. It's tough to get started in the morning. I had a rough morning this morning. I just did not want to get going. The coffee did help. I know Adam's here with his pints of coffee. So thanks for joining me. If you've never been to the show, my name is Paul Abernathy. I'm CEO and founder of Electrical Code Academy Incorporated. Not just a dude that does videos on YouTube as a side hustle. Okay, so I've been doing this for nearly 40 years, creating videos, training programs, enhancing programs, teaching people the National Electrical Code. And through the years, I've done various shows and different things like that. But when Coffee Hour was something that we started about a year and a half, 2 years ago, really wanted to be a way to bring you some videos, but also just to engage with you in the mornings to get your day started, kind of give shout outs and maybe sometimes do little lessons and other little things that we do here in the morning to get your day started. I like to get my day started trying to get it on a positive note. So I've got my coffee in hand and hope you've got your favorite blend of whatever you choose. And again, remember, we appreciate all the likes and shares. It helps this thing they call an algorithm. I guess it gets more people to watch the show. But we don't monetize our platforms except for YouTube. But anything else, we don't monetize. So if you're watching on any of our other platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and all that stuff, we don't monetize that stuff. So we're not about the clicks there. So we just want to be able to bring you something to get your day started in the morning. Hey, if you're new and you've never come to the show before, do me a favor. Let me know it's your first time here and share with us a little bit about yourself in the chat. And don't forget to do the hashtag win to get in on the spin. We're doing a March 31st giveaway. So we have a bunch of things that we're giving away. So make sure you get in on that. You only have to do it once, but you can do it as often as you want inside of the chat, whatever platform you're on. So also, I live vicariously through all of my students and people that associate with our programs. So do me a favor, anybody that's here in the chat, let me know who you are, where you're from, if you're a fast track student or not, what program you went through, and share whatever you want. This is all about making sure that we give you what you want to get your day started in the morning. Now, I did have a request. Remember, people said, Paul, I said, everybody, if you want a request for a show, what you need to do is you need to send it to paulabernathy.com. Well, we had that take place. And somebody asked me and said, Paul, I'm struggling with pull boxes, straight pulls, angle pulls, U pulls. Just want to get a better understanding so I never have to worry about it again and that type of thing. So I said, sure. Let's go on and use the lesson within our Fast Tracks program in order to kind of give you a little bit of a refresher, and then other people can learn in the process. And if we have any questions that you want to ask the Hog, as always, the Hog is today's sponsor of the show. So again, check out Trade Hog. It's a great resource to have in your pocket to get you those quick answers right away, whether you're an inspector, electrician, plumber, mechanical, HVAC tech, whatever it may be. It just makes life so much easier to have that in your pocket. Okay. All right, so let's get some of the introductions out of the way. We have some folks here, our regulars. Good morning, Adam. And let's see, Abe's. Good morning, glad to have you here. Also, shout out to those over on Instagram and as well as those behind the scenes over on TikTok. Also, remember that at Master the NEC, that's the at symbol, Master the NEC, is my platform, is my name on all of our platforms. Okay, so if you see something on those platforms other than LinkedIn that's not posted by Master the NEC, then it is not me. Okay, so that's the only ones you'll see me posting on any of those platforms on. All right, let's see here. Paul, good morning. Thanks for joining. Terrence from up there in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, up here around my neighbor. Good morning. There's Nick. Good morning, Nick. Thanks for joining us this morning. Hashtag win is in there. Okay, setting the tone. Good morning, Dave. Dave throws out exactly what we want you to do. Hashtag win, get you in on the spin. Hopefully give you some goodies, get you at least in on a drawing. We got a CMECP in the house. So I got music for that. There you go. Over on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the only other one that I don't use Master NEC. I actually use my full name on that. So thanks for joining over there, David. Adam, everyone is a win. Knowledge is a winner. Absolutely. Anything we can learn. Okay. Christopher, good morning. Thanks for joining me this morning. Glad to have you here. Charlie's in the house. Good morning. Good morning. Cray Cray's up in the house. Music City up in Nashville. Thanks for coming. I see you, Juan, with the hashtag win. Casper with the win. Rob with the win. Good morning, Rob. Rob's over on our Fast Tracks Tube. You can watch over on Fast Tracks Tube. Rob, what do you think about the Fast Tracks Tube and the way the player works over there? Good morning from Minnesota, Crypto. I'm actually going to be in Minnesota. I'm going to be in Minnesota in probably 2 weeks, teaching some engineers up there in St. Paul. Is it St. Paul? Minnesota. I know there's other St. Paul's, but I think it's St. Paul, Minnesota is where I'm actually going to be for some engineering firms. So doing some code update training up there. So a couple weeks from now. Carissa, welcome. Got your coffee. I see you over on Facebook. Glad to have you here. Hashtag wind. Thanks for getting in on it. Manny, there you go. Over on YouTube. Watching on YouTube. Glad to have you on YouTube. And then, of course, he hits the hashtag win as well, showing everybody how to do it. Tino says, what's up? What's up? Good morning. Glad to have you here, Tino. Red Dog is in the house. Buenos dias. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Wow, we got a lot of people in here today. Let's see here. Nick's kind of new. Loves the show. You're most welcome. Glad we can do it. Going to take your master's in a few months. Study, study, study. Prepare. You'll be ready to do it the right way. Don't willy-nilly flipping through the code book. Okay, structured studying is the key. However you do it, make sure whoever's course you use, you make sure you structure it so that you study on a structure. In other words, if you had to make an easy example of structured study, is spend an entire session doing pull boxes, spend an entire session doing motors, spend an entire session doing transformers. Make it count. Don't just flip through the code book thinking that you're going to have something appear on an exam. That is not the way to do it. Okay? You don't want to go through, and people waste a lot of time preparing for electrical exams by just flipping pages and reading it and assuming what's going to be on an exam, rather than really focusing on the stuff that's important. And you really need to learn the core fundamentals, because then it just is easy. Okay? So there you go. Let's see here. Alex, good morning. Welcome, welcome. Nepo's in the house. Welcome. What we got here? We got Van. Back in the lift. Van is back in the lift. Got his code book. Been taking the Florida contractors practice exams. There you go. You can get the last part. I'm going hard pause. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Never stop. Keep studying. What do we got? Signed up for the Fast Tracks Tube again? Excellent. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. You're going to see other stuff start rolling out of that. Been a little bit of a delay, but it's got so many things on our plate, and I took Jeff off of that to work on the hogs. So we're very lean here. So let's see. All right, welcome. Clearwater, Florida. Beautiful. Love it down in Clearwater. Grace, good morning. Glad to have you here. David, good morning. Glad to have you here. Jonathan, glad to have you here, Jonathan. Let's see here. Kendra, good morning. Signing up for the Fast Tracks. We love to have you. And today we'll be actually looking out of Unit 3 in the Fast Tracks, looking at some pull calculations. So we're looking at some pulls, straight pulls, angle pulls, just knocking that out of the way. Yeah, wish. Rob says, I love it. Wish the delay was the same as YouTube, but love all the content. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't control the delay over there. It's all about how it restreams it and sends it. And so they say there's nothing they can do about it. So, all right, so let's go on and get into the day. So, get into today's lesson. So the question was asked to me to explain straight pulls and angle pulls and all that. And what I want to make sure people understand that there's a difference, where you're understanding that sizing boxes for 6 and smaller in 314.16 is vastly different than what we're going to do in 314.27, which is when you're dealing with 4 gauge conductors and larger. And so understanding how to do that, and again, I go to many job sites where I take a gander around job sites and look at certain things, and I truly wonder whether they really know how to size pull boxes. And at the end of the day, you probably, even though the code has certain parameters for it, you'll probably be able to pull the conductors and get it in, but is it code compliant? And so, people like to think if I install the box and everything goes in, that it makes it okay. And if the inspector doesn't fail it, then that makes it doubly okay. Then there's not an issue. But you do need to know how to do pull box calculations, whether it's straights or angles or U's, and all those type of things. So we're going to kind of cover that briefly today. Hopefully you get something out of today's episode. But we'll also point out different things that I feel might be low-hanging fruit on an electrical exam as well. So we're going to make sure that we cover that. So let's get into today's lesson. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them into the chat. Nelson, I see you in there. Good morning. And Frank the Great, I see you in there. So let's get over to this lesson here. So here we're in the lesson. Again, maybe hard to see. Best I can do at the moment. So this is straight out of our Fast Tracks program, by the way. So this is in, what's up, Pablo? I see you. #win. Let's see. Yep. Always remember the old saying, people have heard me say it, straight is 8, and angles, we just think so. We have to remember, straight is 8, everything else, okay? So we're going to see what it is right here, okay? All right. Here we go. So let's practice what we preach. The first one, straight is 8, right? So here we go. Straight pulls. This is out of Unit 3, Section 5. Good morning, Fernando. Thanks for joining us. Okay. So we've got this one right here. So here it clearly reminds us right here that 314.16 is used to determine box size requirements for 6 and smaller. So don't be confused in this scenario. So if the conductors are 6 and smaller, you're going to be using 314.16. Now, calculations are based on the size and the number of conductors. Now, section 314.28, and we'll go look at that in the code, is used to determine the box size requirements for 4 and larger conductors, okay? And that's 1,000 volts or less, okay? Calculations here are based on the size and number of raceways. So as you see in our program, as we always have some call-outs, and you see you have a call-out A, you have a call-out B. Try to keep it in the screen here for you. So here's just a typical straight pull. And a lot of times this will be taken to a small junction box. But if it's going to pull straight through, it could very plausibly be that it's a long pull and you have to bring the conductors out, and they may not be pulling them straight through. Okay? May or may not. You may be putting this box in. Some engineers will design, they're putting this box in simply to facilitate the fact that you have a maximum of 360 degrees between pull points. So they may be just putting this box in just to appease the code. The only problem with that, and I see this a lot, is that they don't understand that you can't just appease the code. You have to put it in based on the code, and we have to put it in based on sizing. So it's not just putting a box in there in order to appease the requirements to not exceed 360 between pull points. That box takes consideration. And sadly, many engineers, at least the ones I see, don't want to do that. I routinely am asked to do pull calculations, and I look at the drawings and I look at it and I go, where's your pull boxes? They go, well, I'll just put a pull box in here. Okay, but you got to make sure you size the pull box properly, right? So if you look at this example right here, A is pointing out the conductors, and these conductors are 4 gauge and larger, okay? And again, as always in our programs, when we see these chevrons, we stop, and I'll highlight that so you can see it. We stop and we go to the code, okay? So we go to 314.28 so we know where we're going to be working out of. So this is how you should do it if you're studying for an exam in our program. You always want to stop, go to the code, and you see and you read so that you can align with what it's saying in the lesson. Say for here, minimum sizing says for raceways containing conductors 4 and larger that are required to be insulated, okay? Insulated, Okay, and we're talking about typically going to be ungrounded and grounded conductors that are required to be insulated. And for cables, okay, cables containing 4 and larger, okay. A lot of people think this doesn't apply to cables. It absolutely applies to cables, okay. MC cables also, you would be using what's called transposing in order to determine what the actual size would be if it was pulled in a raceway, okay. But you still do, it applies to cables, okay. And it tells us the minimum dimensions of pull or junction boxes installed in a raceway or cable run shall comply with 314.28A1 through A3. Okay. Right. So it tells us where an enclosure dimension is to be calculated based on the diameter of entering cable raceway. The diameter shall be metric designator trade size expressed in the units of measurement employed. Okay, we're going to look at that in an example, but here's our straight pull right here. Here's your straight as 8 right there. There's 8. So if we come back to the lesson and we remember this pull. So this is our pull right here. And this is a trade size 2 right here. Hey, good morning, Trey. Glad to see you in here. Trade size 2. Then you just simply do 2 times 8, 16. So this way has to be, this dimension here has to be at least 16. Now, the question people ask is, what's this dimension, right? Well, this dimension can be any size that accommodates the fitting, lock nut, and everything that's in here. So this way only has to be as wide to accommodate the raceway lock nut bushings, okay? But this dimension has to be at least 16 inches. Good morning, Richard. Glad to have you here, right? So simple for this one. 2 times 8 is 16. So this right here has to be at least 16, and it does enclose conductors that are 4 gauge and larger insulated. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Now, as we see right here, the width of the box, again, what throws a lot of people onto boxes and dimensions and on an exam if they're asking you a question, and you know what, they may give you on a question, they may give you where you calculate the length, but the answers, it may be 16 by, and they may give you a 16 by 2 inch, 16 by 1 inch, 16 by 1 1/4, 16 by 3. And you just need to know that if the raceway is a trade size 2, then your selections are going to be at least 16 by whatever width that's going to accommodate the fitting. So it may be just a simple question. In the real world, again, you're going to make sure that you obviously are going to be choosing a box for the proper length. But as far as the width and depth, it is only dictated by the raceway entry itself. Okay, so whatever the width is of the fitting and the connection and the lock nuts and everything that's on the internal, the bushing, that is going to dictate your width, and that's going to dictate your depth on a straight pull. Okay, that type of thing. So, all right, so in this scenario right here, this width and depth, width and depth has to simply accommodate the fitting. That's it. Okay. There's no specific requirements for the depth of the box, that type of thing. It just has to accommodate. And again, remember in these, it's a straight pull. It's just going straight through. So basically it could replicate a raceway going straight through. But at the end of the day, that is our minimum sizing requirements. So again, for our call outs, just so you can see, this is how we call it out. A says the box width must be large enough to provide proper installation of the raceway or cable, including lock nuts and bushings. Okay, so it's got to be enough for that. B, call out right here, says the box depth must be large enough to provide proper installation of the raceway or cable, including lock nuts and bushings. Absolutely. And then C down here, the depth says no requirement specified for the depth of the box unless the raceway enters the back of the box. That is so important. So in this case, it enters the ends. If it had to come in the back, like it comes into the left side here, and then there's like a cutout here in the back, and it goes out the back, we have a totally different calculation of that, and that is from the opposite wall to the removable cover, that type of thing. And we have tables that we'd go to for that, and we're going to see that anyway. But this is just a straight pull, so it's pretty straightforward, pun intended. Hold on, I got, hold on, where's that? There you go. A very little humor today. All right. So let's look here. What happens? And that was easy. That's a straight one. That's one. No problem. What happens if you have a scenario like this? Well, I got multiples, and I get it. It's going to be hard for you folks to see it. So this side is our 2-inch, trade size 2, trade size 2, trade size 3. And then over here, there's a trade size 2, trade size 3, and a trade size 4. So we're not here to assume that some of these conductors here drop down and go in here. Some of these come up and go in here. Some of these go down in here. I don't need to know the routing of these conductors. It's not necessary, especially if I'm going to do a box fill. I don't need to know the routing of this thing. But what I need to understand is, in this scenario, I'm going to take the largest raceway. So I've got a 2, a 2, and a 3, and I got a 2, a 3, and a 4. I'm going to choose the largest raceway and multiply that by 8 because it's straight as 8. I'm going to take the largest one. Now, again, all about our program, all about our callouts, what makes it unique is that, and Charles and them do a very good job. Charles Miller, who wrote the material, pulled it from the NEC that's used through the Cengage program that we work with, that we partner with, did a really good job of verbalizing it, okay? So at the end of the day here, it says the length must be at least 8 times the trade size of the largest single raceway. No extra space is required for additional raceways when calculating the minimum length of straight pull. However, additional space is needed for the width. So again, while this length here is dictated by the largest raceway times 8, okay, in this case 32 inches, the depth of the box, the height of the box is all dictated by the number of raceways that you're going to have. And so be very careful about how you space your raceways out, because again, you've got lock nuts, you got bushings, you got to make sure you have enough adequate space for it. So in an exam, also be careful in an exam, because they're not going to, sometimes they won't give you everything, right? But they give you enough. And what I mean by that is, for example, they might give you this dimension and all these dimensions. They may give you that entry on the left, a 2, 2, and a 3, and on the right, a 2, 3, and a 4. And it's easy for you to calculate the length, which is, again, 4 times 8, 32. That one's easy. The height, they may give you some box examples. And if they don't give you all the specific details, they're at least going to assume that you understand that on the left side, it would be 3 plus 2 plus 2. So that is, it's probably going to be a little larger than that because of how the fitting and how the lock nuts go. But that's usually all they give you. They don't give you much more than that. So you have to remember that, okay, if it's 32 inches long, and the left side has a 3, a 2, and a 2, and I'm looking at the choices they give me, multiple choices, on the left side, the box would have to be at least 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 inches. So it had to be at least 32 by 7, probably a little more in real life because of the lock nuts. But on an exam, they're not going to give you all those details. But they are going to tell you the raceway sizes. So you have to use logic to look at it and go, well, I know that that box has to at least be 32 inches long. And for the left side, it would have to be at least 3 plus 2 plus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But the largest raceway was on the right side. And on the right side, there's a 4, a 3, and a 2. So a 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 2 is 9. So the left side was 7, the right side would have been 9. So this has to be at least, when you're choosing on an exam, it has to be at least 9 by 32, right? And as far as the depth, it has to at least be what? 4 inches. As far as selection. Now, in real world, it's probably going to be a little more because of lock nut sizing. But on an exam, they may not give you all that. But they will be giving you the raceway sizes. So you have to use logic here. Okay? In an exam, it's never... exams are just questions. So don't think, well, this isn't how we would do it in the field. It's going to be bigger than that because of the lock nuts a little bit wider than the fitting. Stop. Okay? Just like I tell people when it comes to voltages on exams. People, Steve put out a video, it was a great video, saying we use nominals. On an exam, if they give you 115 volts, you use it. If they give you the values on an exam, you use it. Don't try to get into the head of the person writing the exam. Okay? Just go by what's given to you and do it that way. Okay? It's going to save yourself a lot of headache by doing that. So in our example, the minimum, based on pure numbers, the minimum size that this box could be would be a 9 by 32 with a 4-inch depth, right? because of the raceways that we have in play. Okay. So that's if I was doing the overall sizing of that thing. Okay. Okay. What about angle poles and U-poles or splices? Okay. Multiple raceways coming in. All right. So here's our illustration. Just kind of give it a quick look. You see coming in the top, we have a 2, a 3, and a 4. All right. We don't have anything out of the bottom. We don't have anything on this side. But here on the right over here, we got a 2, a 2, and a 3. Now, we're not going to get into how these route. You know, maybe some of these come down and go into here. Some of these come into here. It's not... In the real world, we have to be aware of that, right? Because we have distance between raceways where a conductor comes out of one and goes into the other. But when we're just looking at what's given us on an exam and they do not tell us the routing, okay, then we have to look at it and kind of just work with what we have, all right? So at this point, we're looking at values. We're looking at a Y dimension and we're looking at an X dimension. And we have our raceways coming in, okay? Now, first thing I'll mention here is you know that there is no straight pulls. Nothing is going straight through, okay? Nothing, all right? But with an angle pull, we're going to have to measure the entry to the opposite wall. The entry to the opposite wall. And that's how we're going to get our minimum X's and Y values, right? All right, so let's go back up here. We got these great call outs that we want to point out. So here's A, and A is pointing to the box in general. So A says where splices, important for people to realize this, applies to splices as well. It says where splices or where angle or U-pulls are made, the distance between each raceway entry into the box and the opposite wall, okay, this is what we're trying to measure to the opposite wall to get this dimension, must be at least 6 times the trade size designator of the largest raceway in the row. This distance is increased, okay, so you first establish the largest raceway, okay, times 6, and then the distance gets increased more by the additional raceway entries that are in the same row on that same wall of the box, okay, by the sum of the diameters of the other raceways. So just so an example here. So if we looked at this one down here, so we pick this side because this is a side that we're working with and has the raceways in it. So it'd be 4, that's the largest, times 6, right? Plus 3, plus 2, because they're in the same row and they're in the same wall. Makes sense? Okay. So if we do this, we go 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 is 27, plus 2 is 29. So the Y dimension this way is a minimum of 29. Okay, so that dimension's done. Now we shift over to this side, which has the raceways. We're going to do the exact same thing. Take the largest raceway, do it times 6 to the opposite wall. Okay, so this one would be 3 times 6, and that is 18, plus the sum of the other 2 raceways that are in the same wall, that are in the same row. Okay, so this would be 18 plus 2, so it would be 18 plus 2 equals 20, plus 2 equals 22. So this box's dimension, just as we see it right now, this box dimension is 29 by 22, okay? Good morning, Marlon. Thanks for joining us. So that is your dimension. So in this question, right off the bat, this is the question, and we don't have any conductors being run. We don't know anything otherwise. Now, there is another dimension. We call this the Z dimension, and we'll see that. But the Z dimension in this is if I have conductors coming out of raceway 4, unbroken, and they come down and they turn and they go into 2 right here, these, okay? So it's the same conductor that's unbroken coming from here to here. Then I also have a measurement from the edge of this raceway entry to this one, and that is also 6 times the largest raceway that we're working with. So this will be 4. So this distance, even though this is a probability of this may be slim, but this is the distance we'd have to have, okay? And so we would have to make sure that we locate our raceways down, right? Down in order to make sure we get that separation. And that could play an impact in the real world, not an exam. This one doesn't ask for that. It doesn't show any conductors. But in the real world, we have to account for that because we may have to shift our conductors lower. Or it may be that this box is 29 inches, but because if I had a trade size 4 here and I had one over here, maybe I don't have enough room to get that 6 times separation. If it's the same conductor that's going in and going out of that raceway, then I have that separation. That's a Z pull or Z distance. Well, it may mean that this box has to be larger than 29. Not because we did a box calculation, but because I can't get that distance I need. So, and I have to move it down. Or maybe I have to make sure that I swap it, and instead of having it, the 2 here, maybe I have to have it down here. So you have to think about your orientation of where you put these KOs. It's not simply a situation, and I see this too many times, where I see people putting up pull boxes and you just start cutting the holes in these things, right? And they don't put some thought into the routing, and that can come back to haunt them. And they can get the conductors in there, and they may pull them and not have any issue until the inspector comes in and they open it up and look at it and got a problem, right? So, and then it's much harder to fix at that point. Now, just a quick tip in case I don't cover it. If you ever get into, and let's do this, let me go real quick. I'll do the Z pull. Well, I'm going to describe it here real quick since I'm here. Let me just describe it. If I have a conductor, and I'll show you this in the code real quick, but if I have a conductor coming out of this 4, and it's coming down, and it just happens to go into this 2. I'm just using hypotheticals here, okay, right? Then the distance between here and here is 6 times the largest raceway. So this is the distance it would have to be. If you can't get that distance, folks, right? If you, no matter what you do, you have screwed up, and you can't get that distance where a single conductor comes in unspliced that comes in and goes out, and you can't get that Z distance, splice it. Make sure you have at least 6 inches of free conductor in there and make a splice. Why? Because the rule about the separation between raceway only applies when the conductor comes in and goes out and it's the same conductor and it's not broken. If you splice it, then I have 2 separate conductors entering this box, one from this side and one from this side. Put a splice on it, and then you can get away with this not having this separation between them, okay? Because it can come in, make a splice, and then go back out, all right? So that may save the day, all right? That may save the day if you sized your boxes wrong and you didn't get the separation and you have conductors just pulling straight in and going out and you cut the box in wrong, may just save your day. I'm just saying, all right? All right. Now, if you have a box that has distribution blocks in it, and again, this looks like a straight pull right here, right? And it is, but you still have distribution blocks in there. It doesn't change the concept of how we size the box, okay? So in here, you see where it says where a junction box or pull box contains 4 and larger conductors and power distribution blocks, okay? And this is also very typical when you go from a feeder up to a junction box and then they change over to other conductors that get to be smaller because they're not restricted to the same rules as the conductors that are connected to an overcurrent protective device. So they may change it over in a box using some allowances in 215 and then run a long span and then hit some distribution blocks in another junction box or pull box and then drop back down. Well, you may have these distribution blocks in there. Okay, so if you do have distribution blocks in there, then it tells us pretty quickly here in the code, and we'll go look at the code, but it says that when you have power distribution blocks connected to conductors, the box must be over 100 cubic inches and comply with the size requirements in 314.28a2. The box shall not be smaller than specified in the installation instructions, obviously for the power distribution blocks, which you are going to get instructions with these power distribution blocks, unless you just toss these things away. The wire bending space at the terminals of the power distribution blocks must comply with 312.6, which means that in these blocks, the location that you put these blocks, 312.6 is going to have spatial requirements from the conductors that come into it, and then the ones that leave from the opposite wall. So you have to be careful where you space these blocks, okay? If you're just adding distribution blocks into a box, okay? You can't just stick them anywhere you want, all right? So we have some requirements for spacing that you're going to have to follow in 312.6, okay? Now, the power distribution blocks shall be listed and not have uninsulated live parts exposed. Typically, they're designed insulated, where you make terminations and have a cover that'll mount over it to keep you from being in contact with live parts. That's all part of the listing. Comes with the product. We don't have to worry too much about that type of scenario. As far as this box sizing, all right? Now, horizontal distances. So this case right here, you see you have nothing but 2s. Okay, so that's the largest. Okay. Right? And it simply equates to the same as a straight pull. No angle pulls here, right? But you'll notice that because of the way that's being done here, you'll see what it talks about, okay? Power distribution. We'll go look at the code real quick for that. But you see here, it's trade size 2, right? And then you basically go, it looks like a straight pull, doesn't it? But because of these blocks, you got 2 times 6 plus 2, 2, and 2 gives me a total of what? 18 inches this way. Again, this is basically treated the same as it would be for an angle. All right, so where do we get that in the code? All right, we see our references here, and we can go to the code really quick. I don't think you'll get any type of calculation that asks you about those type of things when it comes to distribution blocks, but you know what? In case you do, we just want to make sure that it's all covered, okay? So here you go, angle entry right here, okay? And let's see here. All the exact same, so you're treating it exactly the same here, okay? Because it applies, it equates to a splice, okay? So that's how you would do it. It actually is a splice. You're just using a power distribution block instead of an actual wire nut or a wire binding device or whatnot, that type of thing. All right, back to the lesson here. Okay. Let's see here. Van has a question. Sorry, Van. The text is so small. Give me a second here. Is there anything in the code talking about coded fire alarms? I couldn't find it. Can you help it? Not in today's episode. We're not. But the NEC typically doesn't deal with the fire alarm except for the circuits for fire alarms and making sure that you mark it and you mark the breaker and fire alarm circuits and the labeling, color coding for the labeling. But most of the fire alarm stuff, other than that, the NEC is not going to deal with. So, and that would be something that would be in NFPA 72 and that type of thing. So not really something that's going to be in the National Electrical Code as far as that. Now, the National Electrical Code most certainly has fire alarm provisions, but that's more or less for the power, not simply the routing or anything like that of the fire alarm. So as far as the best thing that you're going to find for the fire alarm stuff is go to Article 760, and that's about as good as you're going to get for a fire alarm as far as the National Electrical Code is concerned. But there are requirements in the NFPA 72 for that. And there's obviously also going to be requirements in the manuals for the fire alarm installation manuals, that type of thing. And we have this book we call the Brown Book that we use when we're doing fire alarm designs and things like that. So, but yeah, NEC, not so much. Now, there's requirements for certain things like color, identifying emergency circuits, all things like that. But the fire alarm doesn't necessarily equate to that if you're talking about pure fire alarm type of things. Let's see. All right, so again, so that's power distribution blocks. Okay, so that's how you would deal with that. You're welcome, Adam. Good luck. Take care. All right, raceways enclosing the same conductor. Okay, so remember what I said a few minutes ago about what happens if I have a raceway where the conductor comes in and it's not cut, it's not spliced. It comes in, it turns, and it goes out another raceway. Whether it's a U-pull, whether it's angles, where it comes in and goes out, you have this allowance or this requirement in 314.28A2 that we can look at. And it says this. It says the distance between raceway entries enclosing the same conductor shall not be less than 6 times the trade size of the largest raceway Okay, so this provision is applicable even if the raceway entries are on different walls. Okay, so we saw this example, okay, right here. So this was kind of like our other example we saw before, where it comes in and it goes down. It's unbroken. Okay, so in this case, you have a trade size 2 on this side. And it would apply to the same one we looked at earlier. So you've got to be careful where you put these KOs here, where you knock them out. Because here you got a box. This box, let's say, is a 12 by 12. This is a 12 by 12 box. And so is it sized right? Okay, well, let's see. Trade 2 times 6 is 12. All right, so it's good that way. This one's a 2, so we're doing this to the opposite wall. 2 times 6 is 12. So this box is sized properly, right? For this trade size 2 and this trade size 2. However, the electrician chose to put it here in the center because, it looks neater. It's in the center. Well, lo and behold, an electrician comes in, an inspector comes in and says, wait a minute. Since this conductor is coming through and continuing down here, then this is the same conductor. Whether it comes out of this raceway and goes in this way, it's the same conductor. So in that case, since these raceways enclose the same conductor, then you're going to have this separation, and it's going to be 2 times 6. So that means this separation would have to be 12 inches. Well, that's going to be pretty hard to do on a 12 by 12 box. So over here, the solution for them is, let's say, I'll have to move this all the way to the right, and then I have to move this one all the way up to the top. And that may give you the 12 inches you need. But in the real world, if it doesn't, what are you going to have to do? Then you're going to probably increase the size of your box, right? So just be aware of that even though your box may be sized properly, you may run into a situation where, again, I cannot get the separation. So again, I told you the little trick that may save your butt in a real pinch. Now be careful, data centers, all those people like that really engineers, in a circuit, they hate splices. They think it's a weak point. And because people don't typically do splices correctly, it can be a problem, right? So we're going to assume you know how to do splices and you're going to do them properly and you know how to do splices. If that's the case, it's not an issue. So what I would do is I would cut this conductor, make sure I got 6 inches of free conductor on each end. And I would, make sure, and typically, in this scenario, they don't pull it too tight because you could screw yourself. Okay. Maybe you have enough on each end to give you some wire back to get your 6 inches. The good news is the code, also I should say this, there is a good news when it comes to free conductor. The good news is that the code's now changed to allow you to splice to get your 6 inches. Even if you didn't have enough 6 inches, you can splice to get your 6 inches and then splice it. So you could have multiple splices in here. It's okay in the code, that type of thing. So in other words, if this sucker was so tight right here that I couldn't get, I had to cut it and I only have 4 inches and maybe 4 inches and 4 inches, then I am permitted now in the 2023 code to splice onto this to give me a little more in order to get my 6 inches. And then it would be a splice. And then you would technically have 2 separate conductors, and this separation right here doesn't matter. Okay? It's when it's shared a single conductor and it's unbroken, then you have things you have to worry about, okay, when it comes to this rule, okay? So maybe this is not an option. You're stuck with this right here. Then you able to kind of get out of an issue, that type of thing. So keep that in your back pocket. But be ready to explain it because your AHJ may not understand it, what you're doing with that. All right. So now probably a more complex situation is when we're dealing with a situation like this right here. Okay. So there is quite a few raceways coming into this box. So the easiest way to break this thing down is I tell people don't get overwhelmed by this. Since there's 2 separate rows, draw an imaginary line down the middle and act like there's 2 separate boxes. Okay. And you're going to compare each one separately, and that's going to dictate our box. Remembering that the depth of the box is going to be dictated by the number of raceways you have. And you have 2 rows, so obviously the box is going to be deeper, right? Makes sense? Okay, so that pretty much dictates itself. But as far as the X and the Y dimensions, okay, In this example right here, people say, you can't calculate this because I don't know how the wires route. Yes, you can, because we don't have to assume the Z value, right? Because none of the wires are given. So in an exam question like this, if you happen to get a box, and there are very few exams today are putting pull box calculations on their exams. So I think that's bad news because, again, it's an easy question to answer. And I like to get as many easy questions as you can on an exam. If you can, makes life a little easier. But just remember to do each row separately. So the first thing that I would do, as you see here, when multiplying rows of raceways, entering the box, calculate each row separately. Make your life easy. Use the single row that provides the maximum distance. That's what you're going to use, okay? So first thing you do is create an imaginary divider between the two rows. So right here, you see this little dotted line. It's hard for you to see it, but it's a little dotted line. Basically, it looks like this. We're basically trying to separate it out. Do this one first, then do this one, or either one you want, okay? So in this scenario right here, I want to find out what the y is this way, right? Okay, so I'm going to do this row first. So this is 3.5, okay? So 3.5 plus 3, so it's 3.5 times 6 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2.5 plus 2.5, okay? So that should be right here. So that should be 3.5 plus 3.5 times 6. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to go 3.5 times 6. Okay, that's 21 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2.5 plus 2.5, and that gives me 32 inches. So far on this row, the X looks like this is 32 inches this way, okay? Now, while I'm here, I'm going to go do the back row and get it over with because I'm just trying to get this Y real quick. So the back row would be 4 times 6 plus 3.5 plus 3.5. So I'm going to add that out. I'm going to do 4 times 6, which is 24, plus 3.5 plus 3.5, and that gives me 31. So far, the front row is the one that wins. So the Y is most certainly going to be 32 inches. Now we shift to this side. Now this side, we'll do the front row first. So 3.5 or 3.5 times 6 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. All right? So let's do that. So let's go 3.5 times 6 equals 21 plus 3 equals 24 plus 2 equals 26 plus 2 equals 28 plus 2 equals 30. Okay? So far with this front row, this X dimension looks like it's going to be 30 inches. So now we're going to compare it to the back one. Okay? So the back one is 4, 4, and 4. Okay? So we'll do 4 times 6 is 24 plus 4 equals 28 plus 4 equals 32. So in this one, the back row wins. So this box has got to be 32 by 32. All right? Now, in the real world, once we start putting wires in this is where the electrician has to use all those smarts and understand how these conductors are being routed. Okay? Because if they're not spliced and they're just coming in and feeding through, remember, you have that Z value. So you have to be very conscious of where you're routing. So typically what I would do is I always had to be conscious about the conductors I pulled here. So the conductors on this side would typically go to the top, and the conductors that were on this side would typically go to the bottom, just so I can make sure that I have that separation. Again, splicing will get rid of that little Z factor equation, but anything because they're not showing you the routing of the conductors. They're not showing you anything. So you just size what they ask you. Don't overthink any of this, okay? All right. The next would be a U-pull, okay? So if you have a scenario, this is very common to have a U-pull. First thing you'll notice that these are not spliced. It's just simple pull in and pull out, right? So these raceways are sharing. So that same rule is the distance separation is going to apply. Okay, so that could come back to screw you, but you have to keep that in mind. Now, same as 6 rule. Remember, straight is 8, angle splices and U-pulls are what? 6. So what do we do here? So the same rule applies. You take the largest raceway, right here. Hold on for a second. I'm losing my TikTokers. You take the largest raceway. In this case, they're both 2. And they are on the same wall. So we have to follow the same rules we did before for the angle pull. So it would be 2 times 6, because that is the multiplier, 6 for the angle pull, plus 2 because it's on the same wall in the same row. Okay, people forget that part of it. So 2 times 6 is 12, plus 2 is 14. So from here to the opposite wall is at least 14 inches. Remember, the depth of this is all dependent on the raceways itself, okay? Just to accommodate the raceway, the fittings, and the bushings and everything. Now, this is the one, since these conductors, this raceway contains the same conductors as this raceway, there are no splices in here. Now I have to worry about that separation. So remember what it says? Take the largest raceway and multiply it by 6. Well, largest raceway here is a trade size 2 times 6 is 12. So the separation between these raceways has to be at least 12. Now, this is what can throw you on an exam, because they might give you something dumb and say, what is the dimensions? And they may give you some dimensions. And you remember, you know that a trade size 2 may have a slightly larger dimension at the lock nut and bushing and all that, but they don't care. They're just giving you a question, so be careful. Watch this. If I wanted to know what the minimum dimension of this, and it gave you some examples, because they do give you multiple choice. We don't most of the time, but they do. And so that's a good thing. And so what you'll do is you'll go, well, you know it's at least 14, but they may give you a 14 by 12, a 14 by 13, a 14 by 16, or what? They may give you 4 options, okay? Well, check this out. If I know that this dimension has to be at least 12 inches between them, and I know that the raceway is at least 12 inches, then it can't be any less than what? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Because if this is 12 and I add 2 to that, it's 14. I add 2 more, it's 16. Don't let them get you. Because they may be assuming that, and again, you might say, well, that's not going to work in the real world. I need a little more, maybe a ½ inch more to be able to make this connection. Don't matter. On an exam, in the real world, we take care of that. On an exam, do not let them get you. Okay, if you get that. The minimum size for this box on an exam would be 14 by 16 because of this separation. Now, again, you get stuck in a situation where you put in this box and you didn't think about this, and you bought 2 raceways in right here, and you're just coming in and going out, and you're screwed. Splice these suckers. The best tip you can give somebody is splice them so that now you have 2 separate conductors entering a raceway. It's not a straight through pull, and you get it's going to save the day. Okay. All right. Last one we'll enter today, because everybody asks about this. Hey, remember, Paul, you talked about entering the opposite wall? Well, there you go. So when you enter an opposite wall, so let's look at this example down here. So here you go. So here's a box coming in, and it's going back through the wall. So this is very typical, mounting on the outside of a building. You're running up, and then it turns and goes into the building. Very typical application, right? This is what it looks like from the side, right? So in this case right here, coming in and going to here, you are still going to have the measurement to the opposite wall, because this is an angle pull. So opposite wall, right? So it is 3 times 6. So this dimension is 18, okay? Now, you still have this. Since this is not spliced, it's coming in and it's going out. You have this same conductor, so you have this angle requirement. This is what we refer to as the Z dimension. That's what I like to refer to it, to kind of differentiate it between the X, the Y, and we have this Z, right? So in this case, it would be 3 times 6. So you have to have at least 18 inches separation here, okay? Unless you splice them, of course. And again, we try to do everything we can without splicing, okay? If we can help it, that type of thing. Now, The other dimension, in this case, there is a depth requirement, whereas you only have the depth requirement in other ones that we've done is to accommodate the raceways. Here, we have a depth requirement because we're entering through the back end. So here is the entry through the back right here. And so now we have to go to a different location in the National Electrical Code. And we're going to show you where we go to do that. But now we have to remember that these conductors coming in are going to be hard to deflect. Now, let's say we're running 500 kc mills, okay? Rather large conductors, running them in here, right? And now they're coming in the back and they have to deflect to get down here. And we're assuming we have our bushings on, everything like that, raceway insulated conductors. We're following all those rules. It turns and tries to come down here. So we have to have a distance here. So this is where you get the distance requirement. So where do we go into the National Electrical Code for that? Okay, well, here you see down here, you have this little application down here. It says, let's see here. Right, where are we at here? Hold on. Right here. So right here, okay? It says where a raceway or cable entry is in the wall of a box or conduit body opposite a removable cover. That's what we had. The distance from the wall to the cover shall be permitted to comply with the distance requirements for one wire per terminal at table 312.6a. So you only take one wire. I know people ask me all the time. They go, Paul, but I've got 3 500s in whatever equipment ground, and they're like, I only use one conductor? Absolutely. The code tells you, just use one. In this case, if it's 500 kc mil, just take one 500 kc mil and go to that table. All right, so that's what we'll do. So we'll go down here, we'll click the table, and we'll pop it up. And this is what we've got right here. And so all we're doing is using the one conductor, okay? Just the one. That's all it said do right here. Table 312.6a, one conductor. In our case, it's copper unless stated otherwise. So we go down to 500 kc mil. Here it is, 400 through 500. And you come over here, one terminal, 6 inches. That's it. That's our answer for that. So we go back, and the minimum that we have is 6 inches depth. Can it be more than that? Yes. Remember, this is a permissive rule, okay? But it's got to be 6 inches, but could it be 8 inches deep? Yeah, well, that's even better. But it may stick out so far. And again, we're just looking for what the minimum rules would be. And so that would be 6 inches. So this box here would be 18 inches, right? And the depth of it would be at least 6 inches. Now, the width of it, this way, since we have no entries here or entries here to determine the width has to be the width that it takes to accommodate this separation. So you just would move this raceway down far enough to make sure that you get at least your 18 inches. So this dimension is going to be dictated by however it takes you to be able to get this angle. This is why this is typically not something they give you on an exam, because otherwise they'd have to give you the distances in order to be able to equate this. And it's kind of hard for them to do on an exam. But in the real world, you got to know how to do this. So I wouldn't be able to come in. I see this all the time. People come in right here, and then they come out right here. They put a knockout right here. And you can't get that adequate separation. So the only choice is to bring them over here and splice them, okay? Because they get screwed out of this. So again, how you install your boxes are critically important to that aspect of dealing with everything, okay? Does that all make sense? Has anybody got any questions on any of that? That's the basics of it. And I won't go over LBs today when it comes to that, because typically LBs are already, and that's a whole separate lesson, but LBs, typically you buy them already set up, and the entryways that come in are based on the raceways that'll connect to it. And so typically those are already sorted out and figured out. And that's why you get service LBs and things like that already figured out for the size of the raceway entry and the number of conductors that can be in there. So typically that's already solved for you. But at the end of the day, not the case when it comes to boxes. So I don't want to take up our time talking about that. I do want to do some giveaways. So let's get to the contests here. Y'all been patient with me. Hopefully you got something out of the day. We're great. Ronald says he has an example, had a pull box on his. Awesome. Okay, I'm glad they're still around. I want to make sure people are definitely learning how to do pull boxes, because again, for me, I think that I see so many of them done wrong in the field, and everywhere. I went to a casino in Oklahoma, went into the parking garage, and just I'm always looking around, and dude, I saw issues, and they were open because they were doing work, but I saw all kinds of, and the wires were pulled, but the covers were off. I guess they were still doing maintenance. I saw so many violations. It wasn't even funny. It's just incredible. Now, people also ask me, what about big boxes and small conductors, 6 and smaller? Well, it's the same scenario. Every conductor has a cubic inch value in 6 and smaller, 314.16. That box is obviously going to have a lot of cubic inches, so it's probably never going to be a factor if it's a really big box. But nothing changes. If it's a big box, you have to determine the cubic inch. Okay. The rules that we talked about today are only when the 4-gauge and larger insulated conductors. You have to worry about that scenario. When it's a small conductors in a box, then you're going to use a cubic inch value, that type of scenario. All right. Nothing changes with that. Okay. So let's do some spins real quick and give away some goodies. Y'all been very patient today. I appreciate it. So let's do it. If I bored you with full box, I apologize. Not really. You got to know that stuff. And I just want to make sure you know this. Absolutely, Paul. All I'm talking about is pull box straights, angles, and U-pulls. That's all today's lesson was about. Okay. All right, Charles. We did not talk about cubic inch when it comes to 6-gauge and smaller. That's box fill. That's different than pull box calculations in 314.28. All right. All right, let's go. Let's see what you get, my friend. Let's spin it. You're welcome, David. These seem like basics, but I'm telling you what. The mini engraved Charles, you get another drawing. I mean, you might be in for that one, but those knife is cool, and I have a very limited supply of those. So, those are pretty cool keychain knives. Pretty cool little novelty thing. As far as box, I was talking about pull boxes. It may seem, some of you people listen to this and they see it and they go, gee, Paul, I know that. But I'm going to tell you, in Unit 3 competency review that we do, number 2 question or number 3 question is a simple pull box count. It's very simple. It's on our competency review. And I've been doing this for years. I'm going to tell you, and I'm not lying, folks, probably 90% of the people get pull box calculations wrong. I'm not making this up. On our competency review, it's like number, y'all know it. Y'all are in the fast tracks. David, you remember it. It's even in the CMECP. When you're in Unit 3 and you do the competency review, the second or third question is a box with raceways coming in. It asks you how to do the box sizing. 90% or greater get it wrong every time. So I have stopped where I think, this is so basic that people don't need to understand it. I have stopped thinking like that. It's just great information, and I hope everybody learns, because, again, it's a simple process of sizing boxes properly, and then it's going to be better for the wire. You're not going to risk damaging it. It's going to make the pull easier because you're going to have enough room to work with. You're not going to be bleeding your knuckles trying to get things in boxes. Again, tell me how I know. So it's just going to make life so much easier. I'm just saying. All right, let's go again here. Congratulations, Charlie. We got you in that drawing for the knife. It's an awesome knife. I love mine. I use it almost daily. So let's go. Charlie, if it's rigged, how'd you win? Oh, it's not rigged. Okay, maybe it's not rigged. I get you. David, CMACP in the house. All right, David. Right. Let's spin this thing. I love David. He did amazing in the CMECP program, and he's a great asset to our industry. We appreciate all you do as well, David. So let's go. Let's spin it. Let's see what we can get, David. See what we can get David registered for. David's down in Florida. I won't hold that against you. I used to come to Florida, but I had a falling out with the. I don't care much for most of the IAEI chapters, except for the one up in the one that Vince Delacroce is in. I like that chapter. I'm not much on the other chapters. I do like Fort Lauderdale's chapter. Okay, I like that one, but really the only ones that I like, and not much on Palm Beach is okay, but I really like the one. What is it? Port St. Lucie. I like that one, and I like again the Fort Lauderdale one. I like. Other than that, I don't really. They kind of left a bad taste in my mouth one time I was down there, and then. Terry set me straight. He's a good friend of mine, Terry, and he passed, but he was the one that got me down there. Oh, Terry. He passed away years ago. All right, David, what we got? All right, the bidding and estimating course. Actually, be honest with you, David, this is even great for plans examiners and reviewers. Understanding bidding and estimating course is amazing. Get you in that drawing. It is over $500 value. Actually, the guy that teaches that is literally an expert. Is an expert in that stuff, and so he adds so much other stuff to it. Okay, so you'll give that away. Well, do you want to spin again? Actually, you know what? If you don't want, I can spin again. You want me to spin again, David, and give you another chance at something else? Because it may not be something that you're interested in winning. So rather than give it away, it's like a $500 value. You want me to give you something else? I'll spin it for you. Let's see. Let me know, and I'll spin again for you. Nepo says, where do we send questions in again? When you want to suggest topics, I'll trade a knife. All right. Hey, here you go. We're doing some bargaining. Hey, David, do you want Charlie's get in the drawing for the knife for Charlie? And do you want to give yours to put Charlie so Charlie can be in on the bidding, the course? How about y'all? Y'all are bartering here. We got people bartering in the room. So y'all want to do a trade? I'll put David, I'll put you in for the mini knife, and we'll put Charlie in for the bidding software. What do y'all say? Look how this is how we do it. We got family here. Everybody here is negotiating and see what they can get. That type of thing. Charlie says he didn't want the knife. David, do you want to get in on the drawing for the little knife, the mini collector's knife? I'll even customize it for you, David. I'll put CMECP on it if you want, if you win it. Anyway, we'll see what they got to say. The question was, where do you send the questions again? Anything that you want to be talked about or discussed here on the show is sent to paulabernathy.com. Okay? paulabernathy.com. All right. So, David, I'll put the knife for you, and I'll put the bidding software for Charles. All right. That worked out. All right. So let's do this. Let's do it again here. Let's go. How that all worked out. We got bartering going on. There we go. Back and forth. There you go. Gracefield. Yeah. Everybody's plugged in. All right, Red Dog. All right, Red Dog. Let's see here. All right, let's see what we got here. Let's see what we can get for you. I've been very patient today. I hope you learned something about pull boxes. Got something out of it. Just pull box basics, but man, you'll see how many people will do it right. All right, Red Dog, conductor sizing card. Okay, let's see. There you go. So that is basically it's not really. I don't think it's a conductor sizing card. It's how much is left on a reel and things like that. That's really what it is. Okay. All right. So you're in the drawing for that. All right. So let's do that again. I'll get you. We'll let you know, Red Dog, if you win. We'll have an episode that'll let everybody know who won. So there we go. Let's do another one. We're pumping up on the giveaways today. Trying to find some instant giveaways in here. There are on there. They're not all drawings, I promise you. Charlie will say it's rigged, but... All right, Van Man, let's see what you get. More chances you win, the more you get in the drawing. Where is it at? Where's it at? Right there. All right, Van Man, you get 12 months of Fast Tracks Tube. If you already have that, let me know. If you're already a Fast Tracks Tube member, let me know. We will spin again for you. If you already have that. And oh, by the way, David, I will also be sending you. Do me a favor, David. I probably have it in our records, but email me your full address again because I have a CMECP coin that I have to send you. The CMECP coins are out, and rather than me go look it up, just send it to me so I can get that coin dropped in the mail to you for your coins. All right, let's see here. All right, so let's see here. Van Man, do you already have the Fast Tracks Tube? If you don't have the Fast Tracks Tube, all you got to do is go to fasttrackstube.com. At the top, you see membership plans. Click on that. Scroll down, choose the free membership, sign up, get your username, get an account, and then we will go in and elevate that to an annual membership, and you'll get access to the tube for 12 full months. Okay, awesome. All right. All right, well, I don't see any comments on that in here. So again, let me know if you already have it. If not, we can also extend it and give you a little longer time as well. So that all can be done as well. So, all right, folks, I want to thank everybody for joining me today. It's been a great episode. Hopefully you got something out of it, out of the Boxville. Tomorrow's episode is probably going to be shorter than normal. I don't know that we're going to go an entire hour tomorrow. The reason is I have something I have to do. I have an engineering meeting that's scheduled early. So it'd be the first in rare time is, what do you mean? James asked, what do you know with your date? If you can't log in, it's expired. You ought to be able to go in and look at your profile and see when you did. Are you talking about courses or are you talking about Fast Tracks Tube? I've got many platforms. So I'm not sure, but you ought to be able to know when you registered, or you can go look at your profile. It should have a date that you registered, that type of thing. Okay. Let's see here. All right. So anyway, but if you're asking about your course or something, Ronald, just email us and let us know what course you're talking about. If you're talking about Fast Tracks Tube, it's from the date. It as long as you can log in. You'll know. It'll tell you a notice a couple days before it expires. It'll send you an email letting you know that your Fast Tracks Tube is expiring, that type of thing. And then you can choose to renew if you want, that type of thing. So, yep, tomorrow's going to be coffee hour, but because we always go over like I did today, I have enough extra time in there. We're going to probably do a shorter one. We're going to probably talk briefly tomorrow, the course. If you can still access it, Ronald, it's probably still good, but you should be able to do that in your profile. Send us an email. I can't do that during the show, my friend. It's too much, too involved to go look at your course. Okay, so send us an email. We'll let you know. All right, folks, till next time, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you tomorrow. It will be a brief one, but we'll see you on tomorrow's coffee hour. Take care. God bless.